Hello, everybody. Happy marvelous Monday. I hope that you all are well. Um, just a little FYI, I am in an area where the storm is passing through. So hopefully the power, the electricity don't go out again. So again, happy Monday. I'm Karissa Spannis, everybody, the landlord and tenant coach. I'm super excited that you're joining me here today. This is what I do each and every Monday at or around 7:30 p.m. I share information that helps landlords as well as tenants. So if you or someone you know is a landlord or a tenant, go ahead and tell them to tune in right now because we are sharing information today. We're going to have a conversation, discussion, if you will, about Section 8 and what landlords should know and should think twice about either accepting or rejecting Section 8 applicants and prospects. I promise that this is a segment that new or inexperienced landlords need to tune into because it is so important. And so here's my goal. Today, I want to share information that will be helpful and as well as easy to understand for everybody in the rental community. Because here's the one thing that I so strongly believe in, and that is an educated rental community is a great community. And so I just want to share information today. Doesn't cost anything to get this information. And so if you are a landlord, if you are thinking about becoming a landlord, or if you just want information to share with someone else about Section 8, Section 8 tenants, prospects, and all of that, stay connected, tune in. So if this is your first time joining me, please let me know where you are watching from. I love to know where my viewers are tuned in from because I want to give information that's helpful. And of course, the information that I share today is not legal advice. However, it is industry's best tips and practices. But I will share information pertaining to landlord laws pertaining to fair housing. So go ahead and share this information. Hit that like button if you are watching from my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And don't forget to like my Facebook page. So again, if you like it, share it because sharing is caring. So before I get into the discussion on today, let me just acknowledge some people who are here. And I'm always excited to know, like I said, where you're tuned in from. Hello, Mr. Ricks. Thank you so much for tuning in from Virginia Beach. I hope that you are well. Mr. Ricks, is it storming in your area? Let me know if the storm is passing through your area or if I'm just impacted by the storm today. And then also, guys, if you're watching the replay, let me just say thank you so much. Just go and put the hashtag replay in the comment section. Let me know that you watched the replay. Hey, boss lady, thank you so much, Jewel, for tuning in from North Carolina. I'm not going to hold you long because another storm is passing through, but I'm going to hold you long enough to share information today. Hello, Janine. Thank you so much, beautiful, from tuning in from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Hey, Pete. Thank you for tuning in. I missed you, Pete. We must connect, Pete. So let's chat offline. All right, so I'm going to get into the discussion today. And if you had an opportunity to check out the description, we are talking about Section 8 and what landlords must know before. And so essentially, I just want landlords to think twice before rejecting Section 8 prospects or tenants. And I know that many of you're tired of hearing about the pandemic, the eviction moratorium. Well, guess what? It's coming to an end. We are at July the 26th, and many jurisdictions, the eviction moratorium is ending on the end of this month. So we have a few days left. There are a lot of tenants that will be displaced. There are a lot of people that will be evicted, not just Section 8 tenants, but just renters in general who have not paid their rent. The courts are opening up in a lot of jurisdictions. And so there will be a lot of renters. There will be a lot of tenants looking for homes and a place to stay. And so I wanted to share this information to try to get ahead of the curve, to try to prevent some of you from going down a rabbit hole where you don't know the laws, and sometimes you have tenants who are more knowledgeable about landlord and tenant laws, and they end up suing landlords because of what landlords don't know. So I'm sharing information today because, again, I just wanted to just go out into the community and make a difference. All right, Mr. Ricks, you said, okay, the storm has calmed down. Okay, well, good for you. It's passing through. So if you hear a little thunder, a little rumble, don't be alarmed. We're going to keep moving. We're going to keep plugging away to get this information out into the community today. So that's my goal. All right. Listen, Lynette, I see your comment that the storm is leaving you, is heading my way. Listen, I wish I could send it back down to your area. Okay. I don't like thunderstorms. But it was really, really bad. I mean, just out the blue, it just came out of nowhere. The sun was out, the sun was shining bright. It was nice and hot. Then all of a sudden, it's almost like the heavens just open up and a serious downpour came. All right, so that's enough about the weather, enough about me. But just in case you don't know my background, I am a landlord and tenant expert. I've been in the industry for well over 28 years. I am a housing educator. I believe in educating landlords as well as tenants. I am a property manager. I am an owner, and I believe in sharing information. But more importantly, my passion is educating. And so this is what I do each and every Monday right here at 7:30. So if you have an opportunity to check out a replay, please make sure that you are checking out the replays, or make sure that moving forward, you are tuning in to get this information. I promise you that it costs you absolutely nothing to show up to get this free information, but it could cost you thousands if you do something that violates the law, whether you're a landlord, whether you are a tenant. This information will benefit you. All right, so today we're talking about Section 8. A lot of people have heard of Section 8, but then there are a lot of people who are not as knowledgeable about Section 8. So first and foremost, I want to share information so that people will understand what Section 8 is. Section 8, well, the program formerly called or known Section 8 is now the Housing Choice Voucher Program. All right, so here's the first thing that I want people to know is this. Section 8 is not, when you hear the name, when you hear the term Section 8, I don't want you to think bad. I don't want you to think good. I want you to think that, okay, when it comes to Section 8, all right, Section 8 is a program that is available to assist tenants. Here's the thing. There are good seeds and there are bad seeds everywhere. So when you think of Section 8, don't just think bad. Think good, because there are really great success stories in Section 8. And then there are also bad seeds, all right? But that's with anything. So whether you're participating in a program or you're just a market, your landlord who have market tenants, you have some good, you have some bad. You know, that's just how it is when you have rental property. So what I want to do is share some tips today that will be helpful. All right, Lynette, I'm laughing at your comment. You said it is always the same storm. Listen, keep your storms to yourself, Lynette. I'm going to send them back to you. All right, so today I just want to give 3 tips that I believe is helpful. And if you have a question or if you have a comment, go ahead and drop it in the chat box and I will respond to them accordingly. All right, so the first thing is this. When it comes to Section 8, as a landlord, all right, there are reasons that you can and cannot accept tenants. Okay, so if you have a rental property, okay, and you get a prospect that comes to you, they say, hey, Janine, hey, Pete, I'm in a Section 8 program. I want to rent your rental property. Pete, what's the first thing that you would do? Because I know that you're knowledgeable in real estate with being a landlord. If you get a prospect that comes to you, Pete, what's the first thing that you would do? Let me see what your comment is. And if you are a landlord, Mr. Ricks, if you had Section 8, or if you're thinking about getting into Section 8, you currently have Section 8. If you get a prospect that comes to you, what is the first thing that you should do or that you would do? Because I want to start there. All right. I want to lay the foundation so that we will all understand, we all be clear, we all have a greater understanding about what we should and shouldn't do. So if you're a landlord, what's the first thing that you should do if you get a prospect that comes to you and they disclose or they advise that they are in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program? Now we're talking about reasons for rejecting Section 8 applicants. So if you get someone who's in the Section 8 program, how do you handle it? What do you do? And as I'm waiting on the comments to come in, I just want you to really think from a larger level. All right. So keeping in mind that Section 8, it's a program to assist tenants with paying their rent. Okay. So if you get a tenant in the Section 8 program, please keep in mind from a larger level that you are still the landlord. You're still responsible for the rental property. You're still responsible for the tenant. All right. But before I get into the tip, I want to see what your comments are. So Mr. Ricks, I'm going to come to you. You have a comment here. You say, how can you charge Section 8 tenants for damage if they are on a fixed income? All right, that's a great question, and I'm definitely going to answer that. Janine, you said screen them as you would any applicant. Thank you so much for that, Janine. And so that goes back to my question. If you get someone who comes to you in a Section 8 program, what's the first thing that you're going to do? You're going to screen them the same way you would someone who's not in the Section 8 program. That's going to be so important because there are laws in place that protects participants and tenants in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. All right. You cannot, as a landlord, in many cases, there are a couple of exceptions to the rule, but overall, you cannot just flat out deny a person because they are participating in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. You could be sued if you are a landlord with a rental property, residential rental property, and you say, I don't rent to Section 8 under no circumstance, but your property does fit the criteria for them to rent, right? So you can't just flat out deny them. You can, however, allow them to complete the process, complete the application, a background check, just as you would with a market tenant. Now, here's the thing. If they do not meet your criteria, you do not have to accept them, meaning that you don't have to bend the rules, right? So if you have a criteria in place to process applications and prospects who are trying to rent your property, if they don't meet that mark, then unfortunately they just don't meet the mark, but you just can't flat out refuse them. All right. So, Mr. Ricks, I'm going to come back to your comment about charging Section 8 tenants, but I'm looking at the comment here about pre-qualifying them. Do a budget income analysis. Absolutely. Absolutely. Please make sure that that is part of your criteria, the application process that you have in place for all tenants. Because if you do things the same way with everybody, then you don't have to worry about being sued or the possibility of a prospect suing you. Listen, prospects are able to sue landlords, and it has happened. It will continue to happen because so many people do not watch my live. They don't watch my replay. They don't get this information that I'm sharing each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. And so they are just doing anything, and they find themselves being sued by people they don't even know. So let's try to prevent from going down that rabbit hole. All right. So I shared a little earlier that the voucher program, it is a federally funded program. It is federally funded by HUD. So it's not a HUD tenant. It is a voucher program tenant. So usually every state or every jurisdiction in many cities throughout the United States, throughout the country, they have a housing authority. So most, if not majority or all of the voucher programs goes through some sort of public housing authority or PHA. So if you have rental property and you want more information about the HUD federally funded program, the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, please contact the housing authority in that particular jurisdiction to get more information. So here's the thing. It is a federally funded program, and usually all landlords are required to adhere to the standards by the voucher program. In many cases, they are the same, they are similar. However, there are some jurisdictions that are exempt, or they are considered a MTW, which is move to work. So if you are participating with the housing authority that is in the move to work program or format for operating the voucher program, there's some things that they may be able to do a little bit differently. So for instance, DC Housing Authority, they are under MTW. So they can do some things that maybe PG Housing Authority or Alexandria Housing Authority may not have the jurisdiction or the authority to do. So contact the housing authority in the jurisdiction that your rental property is in to get more information. If you are interested in signing up as a landlord in the voucher program, there are ways that you can do it, and there are ways that you should screen applicants. But here's the thing that I love about the voucher program, and then I'm going to get to your question, Mr. Ricks. The thing that I do love about the voucher program is that it's federally funded. So that means that it's not governed by state, it's not governed by city, although the program must still adhere to housing codes in that particular jurisdiction. So the fact that it is a federally funded program, it means that Congress, federal government, provides oversight to the housing authorities on how the program must be administered. So whether it's West Virginia, whether it's California, New York, Maine, Nebraska, wherever, right? The programs generally are the same. Now, the style may be a little different. The people who run the programs may not all look the same. They may not all sound the same, but there's federal oversight in terms of how the program is administered. So New York City, they still have to govern the program in or a similar way that Florida or Texas must administer the program. So one city, one state can't be doing their own thing and discriminating, whereas another housing authority is doing something different. They're all uniform for the most part. All right. So I hope that helps as it pertains to guidance. All right. So it's not ran by the government. It's ran by the housing authority. Now, in some cases, the government may have oversight, but in many cases, the housing authorities, they are nonprofits. They are not under the government. Okay. A lot of people think that housing authorities are under the government, the local government. In many cities around the nation, that's not the case. So I wanted to share that information. But here's what I do love. In addition to the program being uniform, people who are participating in the voucher program as tenants, they can transfer their voucher from one state, one city to another, right? So that's called porting. They can port their voucher from Prince George's County, Maryland to Los Angeles, California, or from Los Angeles, California to Bridgeport, Connecticut. And that's one of the things that I love about it. They're not restricted to living in that particular area. But here's another thing that I love about the voucher program. Okay. The payments you get are on time each month from the government. Okay. So in many cases, the tenant may have a portion that they have to pay, but the agency usually has a larger portion, just depending on the tenant's income. So let's say the tenant has fixed income. Maybe they are on TANF or retirement or disability. Maybe they receive veterans pay. They have a portion, and it's usually 30% of their income, and the government will pay the rest. So let's say the rent is $1,000. Okay. The government will pay 70% of that income. 70% of the rent, and the tenant will pay up to 30% of their income towards the rent. So that's pretty cool, right? That's what I love about the voucher program. And since we are coming out of the pandemic, I know that a lot of landlords are concerned about getting good tenants. They are concerned about whether they're going to get a tenant who's going to be able to pay the rent each month. And so the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program may be the best route for a lot of people to go because they already know that there's going to be guaranteed money coming in each month. But here's the thing. As a housing provider and as a landlord, you are still required to maintain the rental property decent, safe, and sanitary, just as you would with the market tenant. So please don't try to shortcut tenants because they're participating in the voucher program. They are no less of a person because they're going through the program. I have had so many success stories by renting to tenants who are in the voucher program. And I'll also say that I've had some bad seeds and some bad apples as well, but it's pretty much, it's all par for the course. So, if you run it like a business, you already know, if you've been following me, I'm going to say that if you run it like a business, it's going to pay you like a business. If you run it and treat it like a hobby, it's going to do the same thing. And so these are just some tips to help landlords understand a little bit about the voucher program, how to govern yourselves, how to not get yourself caught up with discrimination, because fair housing laws do prevent landlords from flat out refusing tenants in the Section 8 voucher program. Now, remember earlier on, if you heard me, I said that there are a couple exceptions to the rule. Under fair housing laws, some landlords, right? So if you have a landlord, there's a rental property with 4 or less units. Some landlords who they own and they occupy a 4-unit building that maybe they live in one of them. There are a few exceptions to them and things that they can do, but for the most part, landlords cannot refuse. So, Mr. Ricks, if you're still on, I'm going back to your question. You asked, how can you charge a Section 8 tenant for damage if they are on a fixed income? This is a question that I see a lot, and thank you for asking this question today, Mr. Ricks. You charge them just as you would anybody else. You send that tenant a letter letting them know that they are responsible according to the terms of the rental lease agreement, that they're responsible for the damage. You want to document it, okay? And if the tenant is on fixed income, that shouldn't be a concern of yours. Have that conversation with the tenant, follow up in writing with a copy of the invoice, the bill, and usually sometimes I'll incorporate in my letter to the tenant, letting them know, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, I do apologize to inform you, but the damage to the window is your responsibility according to line item 8, section C. In your lease agreement, it tells you that you're responsible for the damage, and then I'll state the clause, right? I'll put that in the letter because I want the tenant to be knowledgeable, right? Sometimes tenants, they don't remember that they're responsible for damage, right? Who wants to be reminded that they're responsible for the damage when they're not really anticipating on paying anything? But you still put it in writing, you send it to your tenant, okay? And you give them an option to make a payment. So here's one of the things that I also add in my letter. When I notify my tenants that there's tenant damage they are responsible for, I'll tell them in my letter, please contact me within 30 days to make payment or make payment arrangements. All right, that's going to be so important because number one, I've identified that there's some damage that they're responsible for. I've identified that I want them to contact me within 30 days. So I'm giving them a time frame of which they need to make payment or begin making payments. That's going to be so important. Okay, so third and finally, if you have a tenant who's on a fixed income and they just flat out refuse to pay for or to show that they're responsible for the tenant damage by making payment, worst or best case scenario, you take them to court. But again, right, we're treating it like a business. So it's not what we know, is what we can prove. And because we know that it is a business, we're going to document it. In the event we do have to go to court, because if it's in the lease that the tenant is responsible for tenant damage, right? And if there's a lease violation, by all means, Mr. Ricks, we can take the tenant to court and we will provide the judge or the courts with the documentation to say, hey, Your Honor, here are pictures of the damage. I inspected the property on such and such date. Here's a copy of the inspection report. Here's a copy or copies of the letters that I've sent to the tenant, letting them know that they're responsible. And I also invited them to make a repayment agreement and they failed to do that. And so If the tenant is not able to pay it all in full, allow them to make monthly payments. And if that doesn't work, then please take them to court. I'm asking you to do that because it is a business. And usually when you run it like a business, tenants will respect landlords who rule with an iron fist. So enforce your lease, take the tenant to court, keep them accountable just the same way they would keep you accountable if you're not making repairs. So that's how I will handle that situation. So great question. All right. Thank you, Pete. Letters, pictures, receipts, invoices, all of the above. Absolutely, Pete. You get it. You got it. Unfortunately, here's the thing. Some landlords don't do that. Pete, you would be surprised at how many calls I get each week. People who are not doing what they know they're supposed to do. Send the letters out. Send the pictures. Take videos and keep it on file. Send tenants a copy of the invoice. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do these things, you cannot enforce your lease. You cannot make a demand of the tenant or for the tenant to make any type of payment if you're not documenting it. Pete, listen, I had a client, and fortunately, she's no longer a client, but I had a client who did not have in her lease. Now, of course, she didn't use me to create the lease because I would have given her my 61-page lease, Pete. But I had a client, former client, who she had a lease. It was not in the lease. It did not spell out that the tenant is responsible for the damage. It does state that maintenance repairs should be made, how the repairs are going to be done. Her lease did also include how it did not speak to the fact that if there was tenant damage, who would be responsible, the process, the procedures, the protocol to handle tenant damage, and that the tenant would be responsible. And so when she asked me to tell the tenant to make a payment, she says, well, Karissa, the tenant is responsible. So I said, okay, well, let me take a look at the lease. So she sent me over the lease, Pete. I looked over the lease, and it wasn't in writing anywhere that the tenant was responsible for any type of damage and that this landlord could legally make this tenant pay. So I, being a housing educator, I teach property management. I teach the law. I can't do something that would be illegal. So needless to say, that relationship didn't work out because her standard was just below the law, and it just wasn't in my best interest to represent her or anybody like that. If it's not in writing, listen, you cannot enforce something that does not exist. I know that some landlords and owners, they don't like to hear it. I get it. It's your rental property. You want people to respect you. You want people to respect the property. But you want people to respect you as being a great business owner. So make sure that it's in writing. All right, Pete, windows, interior walls are items that get damaged the most. Well, that's good. Windows, walls, doors, floors, appliances, plumbing. Pete, the list goes on and on and on. Absolutely. Hey, Christina, thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. You said, is project-based unit ran just like the voucher program? That is a great question. Project-based. So for those of you who don't know what project-based is, that's income. That's a housing subsidy that's tied specifically to the unit. So remember, if you caught the earlier part of this segment, I said that with the voucher program, so tenants who have federal vouchers, they can transfer their voucher from one place to the next. They can transfer from one state to the next. They could transfer their voucher, if possible, from DC to Hawaii or anywhere in the United States that accepts the voucher program. Well, with project-based, their housing assistance is only tied to that unit. So that means as long as they live in that particular rental property, they have housing assistance. So if they move out, they no longer have housing assistance. So here's the thing, just depending on, Christina, the type of project-based housing it is, landlords may still be required to adhere to the guidelines and the information that I shared today. And so usually you definitely want to check with the, just depending on the type of program, you want to check with the agency, because for instance, you have project-based, then you have HUD subsidy. So there are different types of project-based housing programs. Now, when it comes to tenant damage, just depending on the type of program this tenant is in. Now, I'm not talking about housing choice voucher. So project-based is very different from the Section 8 voucher program. But with project-based, just depending on the type of program it is, the tenant cannot be held responsible for the damage. There are some things that the landlords must fix and can't charge tenants. I had a rental property where I had a rental community that I was managing, and I couldn't pass on the cost of some things that the tenant was responsible for. So the tenant ripped up the carpet, she destroyed it, but the government would not allow me to charge the tenant because I was in a government subsidized program. So I had a contract in that community. The contract was directly with HUD. So it just depends on the program, but you should definitely run it like a business. Keep your documents, keep your files, because I would just strongly recommend that you find out the ins and the outs, the rules that you can and cannot govern the business. But that is a great question, Christina. Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Ricks, I'm coming to you. You said as a contractor, I replaced the toilet. The landlord paid me to break the toilet to see what was obstructing it. It was a child's plastic spoon. He charged the tenant for your labor as well as the parts. Absolutely. And that's what I would do. So obviously, Mr. Ricks, that landlord had it documented in the lease that the tenant was responsible. You provided pictures. You provided proof that there was something lodged or stuck in the pipe in the toilet that prevented the water from flowing as it normally supposed to do. And that's one of the things that I tell landlords and property managers. Document. Take pictures, because if you have proof and it's in your lease, if it's in writing, you can definitely enforce it. But if you send a plumber there who is not knowledgeable, Mr. Ricks, this is why I love you, because you are knowledgeable. I have had the pleasure to work with hundreds of contractors, if not thousands of contractors over the years. Every contractor does not know this information. Take pictures, okay? Because if a contractor goes to a rental property, please hear me, landlords, on this, all right? And I know that tenants are going to eat this up. Okay, so if a tenant goes to a rental property, a landlord sends a contractor to a rental property, all right? The toilet is backed up. Every time the tenant flushes a toilet, it overflows. It's in an apartment building. And so when the tenant toilet overflows, it leaks down to the apartment below. And if it keeps happening, if it's a continuous problem, it's going to get worse. And so water travels. Then there are issues of mold remediation, and all of this stuff that comes behind toilets that overflow. Or let's say, for instance, you have a tenant. They take a shower. They take a bath. They don't put the curtain inside to prevent the water from running, right? So the water just spills out onto the floor. It leaks downstairs to the unit below, or it leaks to the basement. It creates an issue. If you send a plumber to that property who does not know to take pictures, they'll go and they'll fix the problem, and they'll tell you, oh, well, we found a toy, but they don't provide pictures. The tenant can say, well, there was no toy. They didn't see the contractor take pictures, so they already know that what we know, we can hold the tenant accountable for what we know. But if there's no proof, the tenants, sometimes in many cases, they know the law better than landlords. So the tenant know that, okay, well, the contractor was here, and the tenant may say, well, listen, I was standing there. I was in the bathroom with the contractor, with the plumber, while they were making repairs. They didn't take any pictures. So they don't have any proof that there was anything in the toilet, right? So the tenant could dispute it. You do have some tenants that will do that. So please protect yourself. Go ahead and get the pictures, get the video. I promise you, it will prevent you from having to pay for something that otherwise the tenant will be responsible for paying for. Pete, you already know that my lease package is at least 61 pages long. Absolutely. You're welcome, Christina, and thank you for that question. You said, Pete, ogres are really good with removing small items that are stuck within the toilet. Listen, Pete, I promise you that if more plumbers, more contractors did that, I promise you there would be better outcomes for landlords in many, many situations. All right. Mr. Ricks, you said my wife videos, my wife videos a broke old toilet. Can you explain it a little bit more? Maybe I misread that. All right, Pete, I see that you deleted that comment. Mr. Ricks, can you go ahead and explain that your wife, she took videos of the broken toilet? Is that what you're saying? Because if so, that was good. I would love to know that you and your wife are a team. You're out there working and she's taking videos and sending that to where it needs to go. That's how you do it. And if you are a contractor and if you don't have anybody to record you making the repairs, go ahead and take your pictures before and after the repair. Or if you have a smartphone device where you can record yourself, just put it on video and let it run. Send that to the owner. All right. Because sometimes, and again, it's not what we know, is what we can prove. And so tenants are in many cases a lot more knowledgeable than new and inexperienced housing providers and landlords. And so this is why I share information to help the rental community. There is really no cookie cutter situation. There's not one solution that fits everybody. Everybody's scenario is not the same. All tenants are not the same. All landlords and contractors are not the same. Every situation may be similar, but it may not be the same. But first and foremost, understand and know the law. Know what you can and cannot do. So when it comes to Section 8 prospects, know that it is a federally funded program. Okay, there is guidance, there is oversight for the program. Know that you cannot discriminate because a person is in the Section 8 program. And then finally, if you accept or thinking about accepting Section 8 tenants, please know and understand that those payments come in monthly. They usually come in on time at the beginning of the month from the government. So I hope that this information was helpful for you today. I hope that if you have any questions, you had an opportunity to drop it in the comment box. And if you're watching the replay and if you have questions, please still go ahead and drop your comment or your question in the chat box, and I will respond to them a little bit later. So I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in today. This is what I do each and every Monday right here on Facebook or YouTube at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please stay connected with me. Please follow me. Please like me on all of my social media platforms and outlets. All right, so my time is up and I do thank you for yours. I'm going to say bye for now, and please make sure that you share this information because sharing is caring. All right, sharing is caring. So please share this information. Bye for now.